Cool. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name's Sam Kessler. I'm a reporter at CoinDesk in the US. I'm coming from New York. I'm here to introduce four speakers, some of whom, maybe all of whom, some of you have already seen over the past couple of days. First, we have Tribble from Agoric. Then we have Marek Olszewski from Celo. We have Josh Fraser from Origin, and we have Nick Kunkel from MakerDAO, who you guys just actually heard from. So maybe we can start going down the line, starting with Nick, with like a really quick overview on what y'all are building. We're going to talk about stablecoins today, as I think we've already talked about a couple times leading up to this.
So Maker has a stablecoin DAI. And what makes our stablecoin unique, right, is that it's completely decentralized. You can think of it as the world's most transparent bank, right? And you can audit it in real time, every single block, right, and see that it's completely backed, right? You can see the health of the protocol. And we think that that is just a superior model to this kind of opaque bank-like businesses that we have in traditional finance.
Origin has a stablecoin called Origin Dollar, or OUSD, and it's backed by other stablecoins, including DAI, Tether, and USDC as well. And what makes it unique is that those stablecoins are then deployed into yield-earning strategies across DeFi. And some of the most battle-tested protocols we have, like Compound, Aave, Curve. And then when it earns yield, it shows up as additional units of OUSD in your wallet. So you can just magically watch your balance grow in your wallet. And so you can think of it a little bit like a tokenized high-yield savings account. And you don't have to, if you're used to yield farming and you're used to staking your stable coins and then going and claiming some rewards, and then you take those rewards, and then you go to Uniswap and you swap them, and then you redeposit those stable coins back into the yield farm again because you want compound interest, and then you look at how much gas you spent and you said, wow, that was a lot of money. We could get rid of all of that. All you have to do is buy this token, hold it in your wallet, and watch your balance go up. So that's Origin Dollar.
Hey everyone. Most of my focus is on the Celo platform, which is an EVM-compatible chain that's particularly good, I would say, for payments, mostly because you can pay for transaction fees or gas with tokens on Celo, which means that when you send a stablecoin, you can pay for that transaction fee in that stablecoin. And so on Celo, we have a crypto-collateralized stablecoin protocol called Mento. And the goal behind Mento is to launch one stablecoin for every country in the world so that you can use them for payments globally on, again, a chain where you can pay for those transaction fees with these stablecoins. Mento is also, I would say, a little unique in that we're increasingly backing these stablecoins with refi assets or assets that can help fight climate change, assets like tokenized voluntary carbon offset credits or even tokenized trees are really good candidates for backing stablecoins because they are themselves significantly more stable than most crypto assets. And it's pretty nice to be able to have a stablecoin that is also good for fighting climate change.
Thank you. So I'm Tribble from Agoric. That is a platform focused on enabling the next generation of mainstream developers to come in and build smart contracts. It is smart contracts in hardened JavaScript, so the most popular programming language in the world, and with a framework in which, like React or Vue or some of these frameworks that have enabled, non-expert programmers to build amazing things in JavaScript with their development environments and frameworks and so forth. And so we're building this platform. We realized to enable these millions of developers to be able to build and deploy new and interesting smart contracts and ways of cooperating with each other, they need to be able to deploy that in an economy. And thousands of years ago, we realized that an economy with a stable currency, a stable token, a stable coin, whatever you want to call it, enables much, much better cooperation, much more rapid growth of an economy and so forth. You know, currency, token, stable tokens are the grease that enables an economy to function. And so we realized we needed to build that. And so using the same framework, using the same programming environments, using the same tools, we built contracts inspired by what other platforms in crypto have done, but also what economies did before that to build a stable token for the Agoric platform. And in sharing that with the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem, a lot of people got very excited by being able to have a stable token that can be backed by assets from other chains, assets across the interchain ecosystem from Atom to Osmo to Juno to Evmos, et cetera, being able to have a stable token usable in that interchain environment backed by the assets on that interchain environment was very exciting to people, and so we're building up towards launching that later this year.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, everybody. So stablecoins, it's obviously a huge topic of conversation from the government, the regulatory side of things, to all of the different mechanisms that underpin different stablecoins, to the stability of these different mechanisms. There's a lot that we're going to try to get through. We've got a pretty good chunk of time, 33 minutes it says left. We might take the last 5 or 10 minutes for questions, so stick around if you'd be interested in asking any of our experts anything of your own. But to start out with this time, I think it would be good, Dean, if you could kind of walk us through, since you're building IST, a newer sort of product offer, if you want to call it a product. Can you walk us through the sort of choices that you've had to make in the context of all the different kinds of stablecoins that exist out there? What are those different types, and why have you gone your route?
So I'll start from the most extreme back to maybe what's the least extreme. There are algorithmic stablecoins. In some sense, you can have a stablecoin that is just based on reputation, and it can be stable until it's not. And so if it's based on a system where if it gets off into the edge cases, it will fail. One of the things we know from crypto is people are going to figure out a way to find those edge cases. So there's algorithmic stablecoins. There are stable tokens that are backed by volatile assets, so backed by crypto, where I've explained this to people many times in terms of real estate, where you can get a home loan against your house value. Your house value will go up and down as the real estate market goes up and down, but you can borrow some amount that is less than the value of the house. In the case of a house, if it falls too much, you either have to pay off your loan or it gets foreclosed. That's unfortunate. If it's digital assets, though, no one's living inside them, and so the MakerDAO was the first one that launched, but lots of other robust stable tokens have launched in a variety of systems that are based on that architecture. And then finally, there are stable tokens where they are backed by assets that directly attempt to reflect the value of the stable token, like USDCs or USDT, or these things where it's either dollars in an account or euro in an account, or it's T-bills or some very conservative investment that is valued at the value of the token that is digitized, right? So it is a digitization of an off-chain value to reflect that stable external value into the digital market. The one thing I want to add, though, is most of those things that we think of as the stable asset outside the market, we like them because they're relatively low volatility, but they're not flat. And many of them were originally created as that second form of asset where, gold, which had a volatile value, people would mint a currency against it as a stable token, or real estate that had a volatile value, much of US dollars were minted against long-term mortgage and real estate. And so there's some robust mechanisms from economics that we can bring in to the implementations we have in the digital economy, and people have done that.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean. And I think there's some vocabulary that I was confused about when I was, getting into this space around, like, what is an algorithmic stablecoin versus, like, over-collateralized stablecoins. Maybe, Nick, you can talk us through kind of how Maker's model spearheaded a lot of this whole, stablecoin conversation we've seen, and maybe talk to us about how your model differs from these algorithmic stablecoins that we've also seen.
Sure. So the fundamental promise of DAI and why you can trust that it's worth $1 is that there's always more than $1 worth of assets backing it. So when we talk about, over collateralization, right, it's, you start to get into like this conversation of how much is it over collateralized, right? And this is where you get into this whole kind of world of like risk management, right? So if you want to generate DAI against something like Ethereum, right, which is quite volatile, right? You can't be 101 or like 105%, collateralized, right? So for something like Ethereum, right, we say, okay, it has to be 140% collateralized. So for every $1 of DAI, right, there's $1.40 worth of Ethereum, right? But then you look at other tokens, right? So maybe you look at like an altcoin, right? And these exhibit even, less liquidity than Ethereum, like even more volatility than Ethereum, right? Maybe there's an unlock schedule, right, for tokens that are going to be unlocked and probably dumped on the market, right? So from a risk management point of view, right, that means that, okay, like even 140% collateralization is insufficient, right? And we need 200%, or we need, maybe even 300%, right? So just by virtue of something being over-collateralized is not enough, right? It's a step in the right direction compared to something like an algorithmic stablecoin, but when you get into this conversation of saying, oh, well, all of these stablecoins are over-collateralized, like, that's great. But what assets are backing it, and what kind of risk profile are they modeling for each of those assets? And that's, I think, the thing that Maker has done very well is that we have one of the best risk teams in the space. And, for the most part, when people come to us, to onboard a new collateral type, we say no. And, I would encourage everyone on this stage, right, to no should be the default.
So I mean, when I think about it, there's kind of two major elements that make a successful stablecoin. There's, the underlying mechanism. Is it actually going to hold its peg? Is it going to stay pegged to the dollar or the euro or what have you? And then there's obviously getting people to believe that and to adopt the token, and I think Celo and Origin are doing interesting things on that front. Maybe to start out with the Origin side, you're kind of working on this like yield farming strategy where you incentivize users to hold your stablecoin on the premise that they'll earn yield. Can you talk about why that approach is the right approach and how you're avoiding some of the pitfalls that other projects have fallen into over the past several months?
Yeah. Well, it was born out of playing around with yield farming myself and really feeling that pain of all of the steps that are involved in deploying stable coins into farms and wanting to earn a yield. I also had this pain point even in like traditional banking, where I never seem to have enough money in my Bank of America account because I've always got it like out in some other I wanted my money to be working for me, right? So it's often some, equities account or, some other place where I can be earning yield. And then, my bills come in and I have to pay them. And so I have this problem where your money is either in like spending mode or it's in earning mode. And what Origin Dollar is something that gives you both. You don't have to choose between having something that's ready to spend as $1. It's worth $1. It's always worth $1. I can send you 1,000 OUSD. You check your balance tomorrow. You've got 1,001 right there in your wallet. But it's earning for you at the same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. You know, another way to do that is get that adoption is what Origins, or I'm sorry, what Celo is working on with payments. Maybe Marek, you can talk a little bit to what this whole payment strategy is. You showed me a credit card backstage that you can use to pay, you know, with Celo stables.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think if you read the original Bitcoin white paper, you know, payments was pretty prominently, I think, discussed. You know, all the way back in 2008, and if you think about, you know, how far we've come really far with programmability, with DeFi, but as an industry, I think payment still is one of the last frontiers that I think crypto hasn't yet really cracked. And so we're working really hard on that in the Celo ecosystem. I think there's two ways we're doing that. One is around making it really easy to send value using your phone. Celo happens to be a really great platform for mobile dApps. We have a light client that's really efficient that you can actually realistically run on your mobile device, and we use ZK Snarks to effectively make that really efficient. And then there's also a decentralized phone verification protocol built into the platform that allows you to verify your phone number in a fully decentralized way. And that enables people to send value to phone numbers really easily. And because you can, again, pay for gas with tokens, you can send stablecoins to phone numbers even before someone creates a wallet. So you can do this in a way that mimics what you're used to from centralized offerings, but in a fully decentralized way. And so social payments have been growing significantly on the platform. There's a wallet called Valora that I'm also involved with that's been doing this, and it's been getting a lot of adoption in emerging markets, and we're seeing a lot of people using it the way that I personally use, for example, Venmo in the US. But there's also additional work happening on the card side. So here's an example of a Celo card. It's created by a company called Amr Group. You can install Amr Wallet and have one of these cards mailed to you. It's really neat. It's a self-custodial wallet where you have the chip in the card custodying your funds using a private key. And they have these point-of-sale devices where you can tap to pay, and a transaction gets sent through NFC to the chip. The chip signs it, and then the transaction gets sent back to the POS, and then gets broadcasted to the network. And it allows you to pay in a way that's very natural for us. I think we all are used to tapping to pay with our credit card networks, but this is settled entirely on the Celo blockchain. And so it's the user behavior that you're used to, but done in a fully Web3 fashion. And so it's pretty exciting. When you add that to the fact that these stablecoins are backed in part by natural assets, it really feels like it feels like science fiction to me. And it's pretty cool to be working on something that feels like science fiction.
Speaking of science fiction, you know, thinking about possible futures, like one of the things that I think about a lot when it comes to stablecoins, or wonder about a lot, is why are there so many of them? You know, it's one thing to have, you know, $1 and, you know, a peso and a euro and all of these different things that are backed different ways, but we have a lot of specifically dollar-pegged stablecoins on different chains for different use cases. I want to open things up a little bit more, but maybe starting with you, Dean, why are there so many? What is the role of all of these different tokens?
So, you know, so there are 180 or so currencies outside of crypto, right? So, you know, there's plenty of currencies in the world to choose from already. So partly, it's only now that we're moving towards cross-chain financial cooperation, right? You know, ETH was sort of standalone, and for a long time, it's like, this is all you'll ever need. And you know, then IBC on Cosmos came out, Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, and saw some real use cases and real cooperation of people deploying small chains and connecting up and having economic value out of that. So there was really a transition in 2021 where suddenly everyone was doing interop, and oh, we've been doing interop the whole time. And now it's kind of table stakes, but we're still at the very early stages of cross-chain DeFi or cross-chain financial applications in general. And so a lot of these evolved in isolation because everyone needed a stablecoin, right? You know, there's a lot of barter happening with these volatile tokens, but economies really flourish when you've got a stable token to grease the wheels of exchange. And so you had them evolve in isolation, and now they're connected, and so they're all flowing around. It is important to note that, you know, DeFi, Summer, and the like, they started partly from having a stablecoin, but they really got launched because there was more than one, right? So now you could do deal farms, now you could trade them off, now you could, you know, you just got a lot more ability to engage in economic activity with each other, and that just started the ball rolling so we could do other things. The other thing is we have lots of digital assets being created in this new kind of economy, and that will continue to happen, right? It's not just things moving around. There's new value created, which means it's a new asset, and people want to be able to unlock the power of that. And to do that, they've got to be able to use that as capital for their stable token. And, you know, I mean, I completely agree with Nick said. You've got to be extremely conservative. You've got to be extremely careful. You've got to be, you know, if you've got a very volatile asset, it's got to have an over-collateralization ratio that may make it infeasible to use. But we also need to enable new assets to come in and new ways of creating stable tokens that are still, you know, highly solvent. And so I think right now we have not yet seen the way to combine to let people unlock the value that they've got in a way that lets them share in an existing stablecoin, and so they fractionate.
Maybe to ask a go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add the question of crypto has always been, who do you trust? US dollar, you're trusting the US government. If you're using PayPal or Venmo or some centralized app, you're trusting a corporation. And the promise of Bitcoin is you just have to trust math and economic incentives, and everything works. Now with stablecoins, we're opening it up again and saying, okay, now we have to consider who we trust. Do we trust Bitfinex, the issuer of Tether? Do we trust Circle and Coinbase, the issuer of USDC? Do we trust the engineers over at Maker that they are writing good code? Or do we think there's probably smart contract bugs in there, right? And so there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and different people come to different conclusions. Some people prefer using USDC because they say, well, I trust Coinbase, they haven't been hacked yet. And other people say, no, I want to go with a fully decentralized option. Other people say, I'm willing to take more risk. I'm willing to bet on an algorithmic stablecoin because I'm going to get some crazy high yield, and I'm willing to take that risk. So it really just comes down, I think the reason we see so many different options is because people trust different systems. And that's why we haven't really coalesced around a few yet, because different people have different views on this.
Maybe just to add to that, I mean, I think in addition to that, I think, you know, we are early, right? One of the beauties of crypto is we get to experiment with new economic systems at lightning pace. And that's really, really exciting, and I think that creates the conditions for a lot of different ideas to flourish and to be tried out. But I think it's an exciting future that we get to live in. You know, in the US, you have the saying that in a free market, you get to vote with your dollar. I think the future is going to be one where you're going to get to vote with your dollar, but you're also going to get to vote on which dollar. And I think that's pretty cool.
And the market's very much chosen stablecoins already. If you look today, far more value is transferred every day using stablecoins than the Bitcoin network. And so I think it speaks to just how useful stable assets are for payments, for settling debts, for international remittances. You get all of the benefits of blockchain networks without having to take on the volatility risk. Where if someone's buying or selling, you know, and you're paying in a volatile asset, you know, either the buyer or the seller is probably going to end up getting screwed because the price is going to move between when you agree to it and when it's settled. So I think there's, stable coins as a category are just incredibly valuable.
I mean, just recently, I think it was this week or last week, Korea's own government came out with the news that they were going to start real-world testing for the first time of their CBDC, which is like a central bank stablecoin. Very controversial issue in the crypto world, whether a government, a central bank, should be regulating a stablecoin. I'm curious, just opening it up to all of you, whether you think that there's a role there for those sorts of tokens, especially in light of what you're talking about here with these different trust models. Because on one end, we have full trust in Tether, for example, and the issuing authorities behind that in USDC. And on the other hand, we have algorithmic stablecoins, fully algorithmic stablecoins like Terra, which collapsed, and whatever else is being built in its wake. Let's talk.
Actually, I want to interrupt for a moment
Yeah.
on this algorithmic stablecoin, because it's easy to hammer on them.
Yeah.
There are bad algorithmic stablecoins, and one can look at what are the ways they fail. But there are also starting to be innovations, delta neutral stablecoins, where if you have, and only if you have, a rich, deep, perpetual option market, then you can make a stablecoin with opposing options, so that if the value of the underlying asset goes down, one option pays out, and if it goes up, the other option pays out. That's an algorithmic stablecoin potentially, but it doesn't have any of the solvency or spirals of death or any of those sorts of things, and people understood them, and people have built other things like that. And so I just want to make sure that an algorithmic thing certainly needs to prove itself and needs to be shown to be extremely sound, but it is an area where we also should do innovation, because they have some compelling market and economic advantages, not just payoff.
Maybe just actually to drill in on that more, because I wanted to get into that eventually, but one of the biggest questions, maybe we would have gotten this in the Q&A, is, are algorithmic stablecoins dead? Dean says no. What does everybody else say? I've heard other founders and experts in the space tell me, yes, they're dead. It's all going to be over-collateralized.
I'll say bad ones are dead.
Bad ones are dead. I hope bad ones are dead, but yeah.
So you will always see more algorithmic stablecoins. And the reason is because it's almost like a Pandora's box, right? If you can actually make one that works, I mean, you solve this almost unsolvable problem.
It's like the holy grail.
Right. It really is the holy grail, and so I don't think you will ever stop seeing new algorithmic stablecoins, right? I think it's more just that people have to approach them with a healthy dose of skepticism, right? Like Dean said, right? They have to prove themselves. But no, you're going to keep seeing it, and we should we should encourage that, right? We should encourage that type of research, that type of experimentation. It's really on the consumer side of not trusting them until they've proven themselves. But if it's possible, we have to try.
Well, and I'd really like them not just to prove themselves it's worked fine for 6 months, but you really want a model where it's not the 7th month that then goes away, right? This is not reputation-based and it's done fine so far. It's that it has to have a sound footing so that you can, so that mathematicians and economists can believe that in a big downturn it's still stable, in a big upturn it's still stable, because you could have failure modes either way.
Yeah. And one of the questions too there is going to be whether the market even is willing to coalesce around an algorithmic stablecoin, given what we've seen over the past year. Even if we can create a perfect one, whatever perfect is. But this leads to kind of another question around just trust models. So, like I was saying before, on one hand, you have algorithmic stablecoins, which are, in theory, completely trustless. Ideally, there's no founder who can deploy capital, and just save it trustless. Then you have fully trusted systems, CBDCs, Tether, USDC, again. Then we have all of this stuff that's kind of in the middle. DAI is interesting because you do accept USDC and MakerDAO as collateral, which is partially collateralized. Dean, you've got, sounds like your hand up here.
I'm choking on the word trusted. Because the
Yeah.
fact that you must use this does not mean you trust it. And so it's
What do you
not-
mean you must use?
You know, like if I have to use $1 to pay my rent, that doesn't mean I trust the government not to print more dollars. It just means I'm relying on dollars from a day-to-day basis. And so be very careful of the word trust, because it is saying something, it's presuming a quality there, or it's presuming a trustworthiness that may not actually be present. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I can use USDC just fine without trusting it in any deep sense.
Yeah.
And so it's important to separate those connotations.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, you know, all of yours, like, what is the role of this weird middle ground then? You know, Dean, you kind of answer that, but yeah, you know, why wouldn't I just take one or the other extreme? If I'm going to trust, not trust, but if I'm going to believe anybody, why would I
Partly
not
use
just
reciprocation.
believe
But-
Tether?
I think trust is definitely an aspect, but I think, you know, features are going to be another aspect. I think whether it aligns with your values is going to be another asset, right? On the feature front, you know, is it rebasing? Is it giving you a yield passively? On the value side, you know, is it contributing to fighting climate change at the same time? You know, these are really powerful new features that we can start ingraining into these stablecoins that are completely new, that were difficult to do before. But again, because we have programmable money now, we can actually experiment with these things and do things that are really exciting. So I would say, you know, the middle ground is not just about trust, but it's about all of these things. And it's going to be really interesting to see how consumers start choosing between these based on all of these different factors.
Yeah, I think digital money is here to stay, right? And it makes sense for centralized governments to modernize their payment systems. And I think there'll be, you know, widespread appeal for that. I know in Korea, your payment system's pretty good. In the United States, if, you know, we want to send money, it takes 3 days for them to move it from one bank account to another for no explicable reason, right? And for people who grew up with the internet and are used to seeing things just happen instantly, that makes absolutely no sense. Why do I have to pay $30 to send a wire to some other bank account? And so I think this sort of modernization of our financial system makes a ton of sense. They're going to, you know, they're going to get there eventually. Now, will it look like a blockchain, or will it look more like a database that has you know, some of the benefits and features of blockchains? We'll have to see. But I think there'll be, you know, widespread interest in that for, you know, daily expenses. But I don't think it removes the appeal of crypto and all the things that we can do in a truly decentralized and trustless system.
So kind of last question. What do we think the main vector of adoption is going to be? Where's the main point of entry going to be for these stablecoins? Is it going to be yield farming? Is it going to be payments? Is it going to be institutions? Like, where is mass adoption going to come from? And then I want to open things up to questions.
So my personal views, but I think it's going to come on the institutional side. In my previous talk to this, right, I talked about, right, how we're doing some real-world financing deals, right, how Société Générale, right, is refinancing bonds, right, how we are extending credit to Huntington Valley Bank, right, to originate loans. I think those are going to be kind of extremely powerful vectors of adoption, because corporations are, you know, I think of them as like bean counters, right? There's someone there looking at a spreadsheet, looking at like how they can pump out like a couple more % like yield or growth, right? And they're the ones that are going to come around first, right? I don't think it's really going to be on the consumer side. It's really the focus is going to be on the institutional side. And so you talked about earlier, you know, like, why does Maker have like so much USDC in the protocol? Well, it's to kind of act as like a flywheel for this real world financing, because when an institution wants to take out a loan, they don't want crypto dollars. They can't use crypto dollars. What they want is real dollars. And so USDC kind of allows us to be like, well, you can borrow DAI at this really low interest rate, better than any rate you can get on real dollars anywhere else. And then you can redeem it 1-to-1 for USDC, and you can redeem the USDC into actual dollars, right? And so for many of these like financing deals that we do, they never even touch the crypto side of things. All they know is that, hey, we're gonna take out a loan. It's gonna be through someone called Maker, and like tomorrow we have dollars in our bank account. And so I think not having to teach people like, oh, this is crypto, or this, you have to set up your wallet here or whatever, like, no, the utility of it, right? The fact that you can just source a loan just the exact way that you're used to, I think that concept is really powerful and really kind of cements DeFi as like becoming these almost like underlying like payment and financial rails for the financial system that are kind of like hidden away. Like you as a consumer and as an institution, like you benefit even if you don't know that you're using it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's institutions, but specifically those who are looking for yield. There are billions and billions of dollars sitting on the sideline right now, waiting to be deployed. And the people who are holding that capital are getting nervous because they're seeing inflation go through the roof, and they're seeing the value of their dollars melting like an ice cube. And so they're looking for some way to counteract that, even if we're not ready to go risk on in the market. And so finding a high yield opportunity is certainly appealing as a way to combat inflation while still holding an asset that they feel comfortable with in dollars. And the institutions come in with, in very, very large amounts. And so it's hard, retail, it takes, so many more people to match sort of the check size that institutions can come in with.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that makes a lot of sense. I would add that I am excited about retail adoption as well, especially in emerging markets. I think when you have offerings that let people leapfrog what they have access to today, you can definitely get a lot of adoption in retail users. And so, while in Korea, I think payments are really well serviced by the existing financial infrastructure. There are countries in the world where public blockchains can do a lot better than what people have options to today. And I think there's a lot of exciting adoption to be had there by retail users. Yeah, and I think the challenge there really is to build really easy to use, low friction on and off ramps for people, and effectively to every currency in the world. And so I think in order to get that adoption, I think that's the current challenge, and that's something that we're working on. We recently launched a open source standard called Fiat Connect. You can think of it as the Wallet Connect of on and off ramps. It connects wallets to on and off ramp companies with a single standardized API. And combined with that, we've launched a $20 million incentive program to spur adoption of that standard in every country in the world. And I think that's how we get to that retail adoption.
So I'm actually somewhere in the middle because, yes, getting out into big institutions is going to be the thing that anchors it in the financial world, and it's critical. But it's easy to underestimate the importance of, for example, small to medium-sized businesses or individual people that got inspired to do something. And the big businesses or the big institutions, of mainstream partly are able to get on board because they can see adoption in the broader world. And so there's an indirect effect that I really think as an industry, we've got to hit sort of all 3 points of individuals with payments, which these guys are doing some great work in, the institutional side that gets, literally billions and trillions of dollars moving. But, the backbone of the economy growing is going to be small groups launching small businesses that are able to participate in this well. And until that ball's rolling, we haven't actually really gotten crypto into mainstream yet. Right now, we're still at the very beginning beginning of that journey, and the difference you'll see when a small business that's starting up and is doing something that they need to do that isn't crypto says, of course I'm accepting crypto, of course I'm using ledger technology, same as I would use cloud technology for my payroll or whatever it is, right?
Okay, so we've only got 56 seconds left. I'll throw in a fun one. Justin Sun, USDD. It is one of the biggest stablecoins out there. Does anybody want to go on record and talk about what they think is going on with USDD? Is it a legitimate stablecoin? Is it an illegitimate stablecoin? I'm the journalist. I have to probe. All right, anybody? Nobody? Come on.
Okay, so if it's that inflammatory, then clearly there's a thing there, right? So the nice thing is I can speak to this with sufficient ignorance that I will go, yeah, sorry, I can apologize later. No, my impression of that is there's some of it that is sort of solid and relying on other existing robust, cryptocurrencies, and then there's an algorithmic piece that one should be very careful of. And so I'm going to focus on, building a, conservative, robust, solvent, stable token that people can rely on and not worry about more exciting options.
Why do you hate 30% yield?
All right, so MakerDAO wants you to buy USDD.
Well, the question is who you trust. So
MakerDAO.
if you trust Justin Sun, there's a coin for you.
This is a man who's been quoted as saying, "Get the pump on the coin." Like,
All right, well, His Excellency is watching, I'm sure.
I would like to be very clear that stablecoins must rely on sort of algorithmic soundness and not personalities or yield schemes.
I think that's a good note to end it on. All right, thank you to all of our amazing speakers. And thank you all for listening.